Alas, bhéir an cúnta cholar éon dáil agus Padraig Casey agus Jess Anglin agus Ambassador Dennis agus Gwynúis le Galéir bála mar dúspáir me fuiachas a gháil díobh sochtan cuireadh bheith liv madan agus cogádagus a dhéanamh le bailí haura a sochtan méid taide tá dénta goibh agus scéal den scothé seo, scéal an a hochtach a bhuiinn leis an Imreacha agus is priviléad an bhór domsa bheithin seo búla liv agus cúpla focail a rá. Now, for those of you who may not be versed in the Irish language, I've just said that it's a great privilege and honour for me to be invited to this beautiful location and to pay tribute to Ballyhowrah in particular and to all of those who have worked on the Peter Robinson Settlers Assistant Emigration Scheme Conference, but also on the research underpinning it, because it's a fascinating story. And as Bill has said, and I thank Bill and his committee for restoring this wonderful building, which is has a tremendous history to it itself and is inextricably bound up with the evolution and development of Mitchelstown itself. But I have a very strong affection for Mitchelstown. My grandfather was born and reared with his family out in Ballykearney, just out the road, about 3 acres. And we, in my childhood, we were born in the city. Mothers sent the kids out to the country, and it was a way of getting us off a bit of a break for the mother or whatever. But we used to play on the old railway line, hurling and so on like that, with Patrick Walsh and all the Walshes and so on, and our cousins. And I had wonderful times in Mitchelstown, so I have a deep connection and sense of history and relating to folklore and so on. But I hadn't quite really been as well aware, if I'm honest, about the Peter Robinson Settler Scheme. So that's why I was very interested in finding out more, and I intend to study more in relation to it, because it is a most fascinating subject, and it's an opportunity for us to learn and appreciate this seminal chapter in the Ireland-Canada relationship. And it's a very important area to study because history is complex. We have celebrated a decade of centenaries over the last number of years. Some of the issues were very complex. World War I, the Battle of the Somme, the Irish kind of participation in that, the controversy around that in earlier times, the rebellion of 1916, the War of Independence, the Civil War, and much, much more. And if I have to say so, I think we did it in a very sophisticated way. Sophisticated might be the wrong word, but a balanced way, nuanced way. And in the modern era, Ireland has come to terms better in terms of historiography. So we're approaching the past not with any preconceived prejudices or approaches. And that's the way we must approach the past and history. We can't impose the views of contemporary Ireland on the past, or indeed the contemporary world on the past. Politically, there's always an urge to do that. There's always a sense of that one endeavours to justify the political narrative of the day by weaponizing the past or by abusing the dead, if you like. So there are complexities to everything. And a study of the Peter Robinson scheme, in my view, gives us an opportunity to drill down and understand the complexities of life at that particular time and what flowed from it and decisions that were taken. And for most Irish people, our history of emigration begins with the famine of the 1840s and the public perception. The terrible images of our ancestors impoverished and starving because of a potato blight. And that had a profound impact on Ireland and on modern Ireland in many, many ways, religious, social, economic, immigration, and so on. And in fact, is a factor in terms of our development aid program in the world. I mean, hunger is always our number one priority in our development aid program in Africa and other locations. We prioritize, we collaborate, we've done partnerships with the United States, with Canada and others on food, nutrition, and we still do that because of the impact of the famine. And we're all aware of the coffin ships, the desperate flight, high mortality rates aboard, and all of that continues to resonate in Ireland. But what's interesting here in this story is that 20 years earlier, it was a different type of emigration. The Peter Robinson assisted emigration scheme was one of many colonial schemes at that time in the early 1820s. Britain was in deep recession after the Napoleonic Wars and introduced policies to alleviate unemployment, unrest and poverty by encouraging immigration to its colonies. In the case of the Peter Robinson scheme, impoverished farmers were offered assistance and grants of land to move to the regions around Ottawa and Peterborough. Their labour would turn forests into productive and taxable farmland and provide an additional pool of troops to defend against American incursions into British Canada. The irony, of course, is that the poor condition of the Catholic farmers of North Cork and East Limerick in the early 19th century was in itself partly the product of another earlier settlement scheme more familiar to us as the Munster plantations of the late 16th century. And these plantations saw the displacement of many tenant farmers of the old Gaelic lords, reducing them to subtenants or labourers under their new landlords and entrenching rural inequality and discrimination. Generations later, their descendants received an opportunity for a better life thousands of miles away in the pine forests of Upper Canada, and understandably, they signed up in their hundreds. And they formed the first wave of mass Irish immigration to Canada. And they built a distinctly Irish community, which was to grow exponentially on the arrival of refugees from the famine. And this flow of people has forged an unbreakable link between Ireland and Canada, which lasts to this day. And I was struck when I met Ambassador Dennis last week. We discussed this, and when I visited Canada, I'm always struck by the extraordinary generosity of Canadians to Irish immigrants after the famine. The story in Toronto is extraordinary. Nearly double the actual population came from Ireland to Toronto, bringing disease and pestilence from the ships. The mayor died in his efforts to help because of disease that he acquired. And it's an illustrative story in terms of how the Canadians received the Irish in terms of today's world. And not everything is the same, but it is quite illustrative in terms of that openness and willingness to help. And that connection is still very, very strong. And I'm deeply touched that many of you, the descendants of that first wave of migration, have travelled to this beautiful part of Ireland to immerse yourselves in the history of the Peter Robinson settlers and to see where they or where you came from, where it all began. And when you see the beautiful farmland of the Blackwater Valley and the Golden Vale, it must be hard to imagine now the desperation and the poverty which caused your ancestors to sign up for such an uncertain endeavour. I'm grateful to the 9 Ships 1825 group from Peterborough for the excellent resources they have developed to tell this story from the Canadian side. And as I say, as a Corkman and someone with deep connections to this area, I want to pay a warm tribute to the work of our colleagues in Ballyhowrah Development in painstakingly unearthing and bringing the Irish side of the story to light. The work that you've done together represents the very best of transatlantic cooperation. And we want to thank the people of the many towns and villages from Kilbehenny to Charleville to Ballyporeen who have volunteered their time and energy to welcome their Canadian cousins and to bring this history to life. And I want to assure you that the Irish government will continue to support you in this endeavour. We want to unearth more. We want good, high-quality history. And I think that in itself is something we can advance, because it's a very rich moment for Canada-Ireland relations. Last year we marked 85 years of diplomatic relations between our two countries, and I also had the honour of meeting former Prime Minister Trudeau during my visit to Canada for St. Patrick's Day in my role as Taoiseach the year before last, as well as announcing the opening of a new Ireland House to strengthen our bilateral engagement. The Ireland House is where we bring all Irish agencies, including the Embassy, under the one building and one umbrella. And pleased to report that Ireland has tripled its diplomatic footprint in Canada, over the past 5 years. We've opened our new Consulate General in Vancouver in 2018 and followed this up with the opening of our new Consulate General office in Toronto in 2022. And these announcements, together with the long-established Embassy of Ireland in Ottawa, are a manifestation of the government's interest in the continued deepening of our relationship with Canada. Our deep shared history and close friendship is in large part thanks to the positive influence of our emigrants who undertook the journey to Canada. They built lives and communities in their new home and made significant contributions to their new home and the generations, of course, that followed. I had the pleasure, as I've said, of sitting down last week with Ambassador King to discuss the strong, lasting bonds between our two countries and our shared commitment. It's very important to democracy, to human rights, and to a rules-based international order. And the Ambassador and I were very, very committed to that. These are fundamental values that, notwithstanding what is happening in the global world today, and particularly with the emergence of what I might call discordant voices around some of these fundamental values, we can't really shrink from them in terms of human rights, in terms of democracy, and a rules-based international order. It is our safeguard as a small country, and something we're very passionate about. Next week I will travel to Ottawa to meet with Prime Minister Carney, and I look forward to talking to him about this event, which really encapsulates the depth of the relationship between our two countries. And like countless other Canadians, Prime Minister Carney has strong Irish heritage that he speaks of with pride. And I'm confident that our bilateral relations will continue to go from strength to strength through his tenure. I look forward to inviting the Prime Minister to visit the homeland of his grandparents in County Mayo. And of course, he's a very significant person himself in a previous life before he became Prime Minister, as Governor of the Central Bank of Canada, United Kingdom. And he's written a tremendous tome, quite an academic economic book, by the way, which I've read. But I didn't come from the economic side of the story. I'm a history guy, but I suddenly found myself in the early chapters of that book grappling with 16th century economics, 17th century economics, 18th century economics. So Prime Minister Carney has some depth and breadth, I'll say that. But I'm still looking forward to engaging with him, because the two governments are committed to building on our close political, economic and cultural relations in the years ahead. And it's stories like this that really has enabled that connection to happen. And it's important in the world today and valuable to have stalwart friends, and the Canadian-Irish relationship is one that has stood the test of time, because it is built on the cornerstone of the connections between our peoples, exemplified by your presence here today. And I'm really thrilled with the work that has been done so far. Anything we can do to add to that work and support you, we're more than willing to do, and to continue to support Ballyhowrah and the Trust here in terms of this particular building, and also the relationship between Ireland and Canada, but also between this geographic area, and British Canada as well. So thank you very much again for your warm welcome. Congratulations on such a thoughtful week, and I wish you the very best in terms of the conference and the outputs of the conference, which I look forward to reading more on. Thank you, and the very best of luck. Gormila Mahabir.